Well, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Jamie Koufman, and this is Dr. Koufman's Reflux Hour. And today I'm going to talk about trigger foods. And it's really an important topic, but I have a lot of caveats. The first one is if your reflux is terrible and you're having symptoms every day, you probably need to do a detox. I view adding foods to figure out which ones are your trigger foods during transition. But that said, it's worth talking about trigger foods. One of the things that I say to patients is the hardest part about treating reflux is everybody's different, and that it'll take you a year probably to figure out all your best and worst and what makes a difference and get your reflux under control. Not just on the short run, but over the long run. I want to make one other comment about the word trigger foods. In my experience, there are three types of trigger. Two of them are specifically related to reflux and one isn't. The classic reflux trigger, my number one trigger was chocolate. I could have my reflux under pretty good control and Friday evening eat one chocolate chip and explode and essentially be refluxing for the weekend. So that's a trigger food. The second type of trigger food is more insidious. It makes the stomach unhappy and the stomach stops. It's called gastroparesis. And then things don't go out of the stomach, back up. You're more likely to have reflux as that you eat and there's more pressure. So, for example, for me, green peppers gave me and I feel bloated and I wouldn't feel right. And then finally, there's another type that's not really the topic today, but it's interesting. I can't eat black pepper, but I can eat red pepper and a lot of other. If I eat black pepper, it feels like there's a hot coal right here, and I cough and I cough and I cough. So those are the different types of triggers that I see. And I'd like to also apologize for the fact that I don't know very much about this. There are a lot of questions people, for example, something's supposed to cause. I did an article today, and the idea of peanut butter can cause gastroparesis. Well, unless somebody has actually looked at gastric motility with an expensive set of instruments and then given peanut butter and assessed it and have a large enough sample to be able to report it in the literature, which has not been done, then the idea that I say gastroparesis is one of the complications is only because as I search the literature in the internet, it comes up. And I'm talking about the medical literature, which is PubMed. So, and you can all research on PubMed. You go to PubMed and then you put in your topic, try to make it specific. Does put peanut gastroparesis plus gastroparesis and see if anything comes up. So, without further ado, I'd like to talk about the top triggers first, and then answer some of your questions. In my opinion, the top trigger is alcohol. And so if you are a Wall Streeter and you're going to, Keen's Steakhouse with an 8:30 reservation and you're going to have maybe 2 cocktails and then a steak with the béarnaise sauce on your asparagus and a fully loaded potato with 2 glasses of wine, your chance of refluxing that night, in my opinion, is 100%. And so if your alcohol and if you go to bed with it, if you're just going out drinking, if you go to bed with a buzz, you're going to reflux all night. So here's the deal. Alcohol relaxes the lower esophageal sphincter. I'm not convinced that all of these different triggers do that, but alcohol does. And so, by the way, does nicotine, which I guess we should talk about. But alcohol is the biggest one. So if you're going to be trying to get your reflux under control, you ought to think about coming off alcohol for 6 months or a year if you really want to get under control. And here's why. After reflux is under control, and I mean good control, about 50% of people can drink in moderation and not get reflux. But the other 50%, if they have one cocktail, they're refluxing that night. So, it's a hard one because everybody, or a lot of people, like to drink. I'm a gluten-free, teetotaling vegan. I'm actually a cheating vegan, fish and occasionally other stuff. So alcohol is the number one. So if you ask me to rate them, alcohol could affect as many as let's just say 99%. It's the big add that to whatever else is going on, and reflux is likely. Second is carbonated drinks. Carbonated drinks, it's interesting to me when people look at. I always look at my 1-star reviews, and I got a 1-star review. Excuse me, I'm dropping acid. I aspirated my own. And it said there's nothing new here. In fact, all of it's new. All the science, the stuff about pepsin, the stuff about pH, the stuff about the Food and Drug Administration, the stuff about the relationship to these different kinds of problems like laryngitis, globus, dysphagia, subglottic stenosis, cancer. All that work is scientific work. It's done clinical work and basic science in the lab, cell biology work. So that all is in dropping acid, and anything that come after that, there's very, very little of this work being done. The best cell biology done in this area was done by Nikki Johnston and me, 2002 to around 2008 or so. But in any case, the issues of what's new is not changing. So I just want to go through one more time why carbonated beverages are so bad. The Food and Drug Administration says you have to acidify them to at least pH 4.2 or less, so you don't get bacteria. You've never heard of anybody getting E. coli from drinking a Coca-Cola. The problem is that the Food and Drug Administration never said don't go too low. And so there are a ton of beverages that are in the 2.9-ish range. In nature, the most acidic thing we know is lemons and limes at 2.7. Those are not things you should have if you have reflux. So they're a big factor. They precipitate it. And what happens is you got pepsin everywhere. I'm not going to go through all of that. And when you drink a soda pop that's highly, and carbonation also adds increased inter-abdominal or stomach pressure. So that's number two. Carbonated drinks are a no-no. And in all honesty, everything in a bottle or a can. I drink tea, I drink coffee, and I drink water. And I have lovely tea here. I do Twinings, English breakfast, excuse me, and the chamomile, and one other one. I can't remember right now. I just got. So listen, let's go through these. Chocolate is number 3, and chocolate has 3 things. So I guess milk chocolate's worse than dark chocolate. They have high fat. Fat relaxes lower valve. You have theobromine, and theobromine has direct effects on the lower esophageal sphincter. And chocolate is a big one. And if you ask me what percentage of people it's a trigger food for, I would say about 70%, 70 out of 10. Fried fatty foods. I mean, if you want a reflux, go to McDonald's. And I can't believe it. The people are ordering 2 double cheeseburgers with a big fries and a Coke this big. So that's not sustainable if you want to protect your health. And so I'm just going to say nothing more than high-fat foods, and particularly deep-fried foods, are no. You could just as well have had the other one that doesn't taste quite as good, the grilled sandwich. But so there it is. Now we get to an interesting one: onions. I've learned a lot about onions. I'm an onion lover, and onions were a trigger food for me, particularly raw onions. So what I learned was that onions have a gradation in terms of how sharp they are. It depends upon where they're grown. And the sharper the onion, if you cry when you cut the onion, that's a reflux onion. So what I learned was sweet Vidalia onions, I don't cry when I chop them up. And when my reflux was in reasonable control, I wanted to basically see if this was a trigger. But I also cooked the onions until they were clear at a high temperature, and then slow until they're caramelized. So that blog is actually there on onions. Onions are a pretty big one in terms of reflux triggering. I'd say we're certainly in the more than 50%, maybe 60%. Next is garlic. Garlic is mostly the meat of the garlic. For example, if you have a garlic problem, you theoretically could take your oil, put the garlic in, and then take it out once you get the flavor, or use a garlic powder. So the answer, though, is and by the way, all these numbers I'm giving you is because I'm old, and I've been listening to patients since 1978. And so what happens is I sort of come to have some respect for these different trigger foods and know a little bit about them. So, for example, the onions, the sharp ones are worse than the not so sharp ones. Garlic is again, it's the meat mostly, and I think that's less than 50%. I think that garlic is a trigger food for, let's just say 45%. Now we get to tomatoes. Now, most importantly, a tomato and tomato sauce that's bought at a store are 2 different things. So these have lots of chemicals, lots of acid, most of them, I don't know every brand, in the can. Now, tomato cut to be on a sandwich or to have caprese or whatever you're going to have, by itself does not have a lot of people that are allergic to it. If they're allergic to them, sensitive to, if you have reflux with that, you know. And that's one of those that is easy to tell. I think it's only about 35% for plain tomatoes. Now, when you get to peppers, that's a lot of things. There's bell peppers, and then there's hot peppers, and then there's condiment peppers. The thing is, capsaicin is a problem. Capsaicin is the thing that makes stuff hot. And bell peppers that aren't hot have a problem. So I had a terrible problem with bell peppers. They gave me that gastroparesis. And so peppers are one of those things that should be introduced without, you don't add onions and peppers and 5 different ingredients and say, ooh, a reflux like a bandit last night. I wonder what it was. Now, nuts, I put up a blog on peanuts today, and the reason I did is I got a lot of questions about peanut butter. I had no idea that most of the country eats peanuts and peanut butter like it was going out of style. I mean, other than the hamburger, it's way up there among the foods that people like to consume. 94% of the country has peanuts at least once during the year, and 80% have it monthly, at least monthly. So I was interested in peanuts because I had a sort of a rank order for the different um, the different nuts, and almonds are the best. And it's probable that people can have almonds even during detox. I think almonds just don't cause reflux. Um, After almonds, in terms of good, there's pistachios, and that's good because I use pistachios as a in soups. And I grind them up and I put them in, and they're lovely fat. But it's good fat, and it doesn't seem to cause reflux very often. A third is walnuts. Walnuts aren't so bad. And then you start getting into cashews, 50%, and then you get macadamia nuts and cashews. So where is peanut and all that? Peanut's right in the middle. So how much of a trigger food it is probably is a function of, whether you have a sensitivity. In this particular case, some particular chemicals have been identified. And by the way, if you have a trigger food, it may be one chemical. And I'll give you an example with cashews. Cashews cause reflux in about everyone. At least they do now. This is a story that's come back to me 3 times. Most of our cashews now come from Brazil. And when you do a cashew, it has that little black, very, very tight, thin shell on the nut. The chemical they use to take that off causes reflux. Furthermore, let's just talk about differences in chemicals. When I grew up, I was eating Red Delicious apples. And when I had reflux and I went to Red Apples after detox, I found that Red Delicious apples gave me reflux, but I could eat Fuji apples without a problem. Finally, I want to talk about peppermint and then coffee and then some of the more interesting ones. So mint makes the lower valve relax, period. It has really got, high levels. I never recommend mint anything. And if you're going to have a mint chocolate after a big meal, good luck. Join the Reflux Club. Now, coffee is the most interesting one because people say, do I allow coffee? Excuse me, because it's acidic. Coffee is not acidic particularly. Maybe if you feel like it's acidic, it's trigger food for you. The thing about coffee is it's a trigger food for a small number of people. And the way you know is you get the same problem with decaf. And you're drinking it and your stomach doesn't feel so good and maybe you're starting to have a little reflux. And it's first thing in the morning. And I've even to the point where someone would get gastroparesis and end up after a cup of coffee going to the bathroom and throwing up. So it's not a common one, by the way. I think coffee's down around 15%, maybe less. But if you have it, you should know. And it's not just the caffeine. Now, that's another question. If you're drinking a pot of coffee before lunchtime, then you got a lot of caffeine, and caffeine makes the valve relax. But we allow 1 or 2 cups with or without cream and sugar, don't care, in the morning. You can't drink it late, you can't drink it all day. So those are the big 10. And I'd like to discuss a few others and just tell some stories. And by the way, the best fruits for reflux are bananas, melons, ginger. And so, lovely lady, used to be my patient, actually an editor at the New York Times, comes back to see me. I haven't seen her in 4 years. And she says, Dr. Koufman, I'm getting heartburn at 11 o'clock in the morning. And every day. I said, what do you have for breakfast? She said, I have oatmeal with raisins and a banana. I said, stop eating the banana. And her heartburn went away. So even though banana is a very, very good reflux food, I've written also a blog on bananas, it is a trigger food for about 5%. And it may be something in the ester, because the more ripe they are, the more it seems to trigger. But it's a small percentage of people, and it's just worth knowing about. Same thing about melons and oatmeal. I've had, I can count on my hand how many people over the course of 50 years have had ginger and oatmeal. Now, I'll tell you a funny one. It just gets back to this question of a chemical. So I had a very sophisticated woman come to me, and she said that her primary trigger food was yellowfin tuna. And I thought that was pretty funny. But she was a sushi eater, and she knew. And so what all that message is that anything can be a trigger food. Okay, things that you wouldn't even think is trigger food. So I had a problem with cucumber. I've only had one other person say cucumber was a trigger food for them. So that's sort of my prepared remarks, and I'd like to start answering some of these questions. So in the peanut article, which I just put up, it's clear that there is a protein that triggers the reactions. And it is likely, so not proven, it is likely that just like it causes hives, just like it causes anaphylaxis in some, just like it causes reflux, it actually has the same effects from the same chemical. No one's ever studied it, but we're talking here about gastroparesis and valve problems and reflux. By the way, I didn't give a number for peanut butter, and I don't really know. It's interesting because the peanut butter questions have been more in the last few years, and there was a difference between peanuts and peanut butter. In peanut butter, they may be adding fats, including trans fats, they may be adding sweeteners, molasses, and so on. So if you're the other way, you can get natural. What natural means is they pulverize those nuts and roast those nuts until they're creamy. So if you can get that, and you can afford it, I bet it's more expensive, then go ahead and see if you can get a natural peanut butter. Okay, so the question Marina asked, I've been dancing around it, which is, can we conclude that this is an allergy-like reaction and that a respiratory reflux is in part an allergic reaction to food? You know what? I just don't know. I think that some of these things definitely just cause the lower esophageal sphincter to open. I mean, we know chocolate does it. We know mints do it. We know nicotine does it. We know a bunch of things, but we don't know all of them. And the only way you would know all of them is if you had people with in the transition stage. You have to put a pH probe down, and this thing would take forever. You'd let them have this, and then you'd wait 30 minutes or an hour, and let them have this. So, and then is that a realistic life situation? So the answer is, it's your responsibility to figure out whether you have trigger foods and what they are. When I talk to people, and by the way, you can do a consultation with me anytime. I do them on Sundays and Mondays. When I have somebody who's going into detox and then transition. By the way, the best book for transition is Dr. Koufman's Acid Reflux Diet. It's not really covered very well. And it's covered to some extent in the blog. But what I tell them is, you're going to be a lot smarter a year from now than you are now. And listen to your body and play smart. And so, for all of you, if you're acute phase refluxers, you're going to have to do the big deal where you stop drinking, you eat early, you take famotidine, you do all the stuff. I did a Facebook Live on detox last month. So the answer is, Marie, you asked a very good question. Some of them may be allergic. And in Dropping Ask, we say it's okay to have coffee. It's a little bit of caffeine. People love it. They sort of need it to get going. It's not acidic, and we've not had a problem except in people who have sensitivity to coffee. And then Shannon wants to know, why do you allow low-fat milk, but other low-fat, low-acid diets don't? First of all, the milks are the most alkaline thing we have, period. They're all 7 or above, other than alkaline water. So, I drink unsweetened almond milk with vanilla. And since I'm vegan, I'm a fan of the Rice Krispie and fruit. And I had half a banana sliced up this morning. So, the answer is I stay away from other low-acid diets. The science, we measured it. Go look at my blog on smoothies, and you'll see we looked at the milks, and the milks were all high pH, which is great, and they can be used as a for pH balancing. I've said this before. If you put I'm sorry, my sister and I had a cold. If you take a smoothie and you use almond milk and a banana and a couple of ice cubes, I have ice trays that have alkaline water, you'll probably put whatever else you want in your smoothie. And and if you're really having a problem, get yourself some pH paper. My last blog on alkaline water gives you a link to this thing. They're $8, and those are the right ones. And so it goes. Milk is fine. Now, someone asked me about exercise-induced reflux, and it's huge. And it really got my attention because one of the top marathoners in the world came to me and said, I'm having breathing problems during the first 30 minutes of running. And so, and by the way, there's an article on exercise-induced asthma and pseudo-asthma and reflux on the blog. It is very common in refluxers, and it may be the activity. Now, obviously, if you go to exercise, all exercises are not created equal. So downward facing dog is not something you do if you have reflux and you're trying to get over it. Nor are planks, nor are sit-ups, nor are lift heavy weights. You have to do weights that will allow you to continue to have a conversation. Otherwise, you're increasing intra-abdominal pressure. Second thing is you eat after you exercise. Don't have, I'm going to resist a little bit for energy and then go exercise. Don't eat. Now comes some pretty cute ones. Gaviscon Advance is really good to take before you exercise. It's Gaviscon Advance Aniseed. You got to order it. It's not available in your drugstore. The name of the product is Gaviscon Advance. It's not Gaviscon Extra Strength or anything like that. So take a belt of that, which ends up being about 2 teaspoons. And then, while you're exercising, you want to chew gum or suck on a hard candy. I chewed sugarless cinnamon for years because cinnamon lasts longer flavor than most of the other ones. Like Juicy Fruit was gone in like 5 minutes. And the other thing I like very much were the original Ricolas. You don't find them very often. I was in my drugstore last week, and there they were, original Ricolas. They're big and they're square. And we have them in Carnegie Hall. And here's why. Let's just say you're sucking on a Ricola. When you suck on a Ricola, you make more saliva, and there's more salivary bicarbonate, and you swallow a lot. And we've actually done the studies with the pH probe. We waited till the patient was having reflux, and we said, start chewing this gum. And boom, we could abort the reflux episode. And that's when a lot of people reflux after meals. So by putting them in Carnegie Hall, all those people who went out to dinner and had alcohol and have reflux want to come in and clear the throat and cough. They're given away free. And so that made a big difference. There's always the 4 coughers that are, they belong in the other book, Dr. Koufman's, whatever it is, a chronic cough enigma. So that's the story with that. I think exercise-induced empty stomach, Gaviscon advanced, gum chewing, or sucking on hard candy. You probably take a hard candy or gum and stick it up there when you're doing an exercise and do a little more chewing. And not to do any, for example, if you're a spinner, you can't go down in that normal biking pose. You got to get in the old lady sit-up. And you're not going to go as fast, but you're not going to reflux. I have another question about exercise. All right, this is a good question. When I started to write the article that I put up, the 3-part article on the vagus, I did that for me. But part 1 is really good for everybody because it's actually the first draft of a chapter I'm working on for my new book, Respiratory Reflux, How Silent Reflux Causes Disease. And I believe it's going to be my most important book, I would hope. And as I'm getting older, the writing is much, much harder. It's really interesting. A task which I thought would probably take me a day or a day and a half now takes 2 weeks to do a big section. So it's really, I'm slugging through it. But when you go online and you look about vagus, you get all this magical, mystical stuff and these exercises and breathing and all these things you do to strengthen your vagus. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm clueless whether any of this is true. But what is true is the vagal nucleus, the control center in the brainstem, is the biggest one. And it's connected to a lot of stuff. When you faint, by the way, the vagus controls respiratory system, cardiovascular system, and digestive system, all 3 of them. So if you have, death and then you go to the funeral and you boom, down you go, that's vagal. So I wrote this article on the vagus, and I think that the problem with understanding what I do is you got digestive problems, respiratory problems, and sometimes vagal problems. I'll give you an example of the most interesting vagal problem. So I see a lot of people have shortness of breath as one of their respiratory reflux symptoms. So here's an example. Got a relatively young woman, non-drinker, non-smoker, otherwise healthy as a horse, already seen a pulmonologist who said her lungs are perfect. And she can get up the stairs fine, coming out of a subway, whatever, 17 stairs, she runs up them. What she can't do is take a full breath in. It just doesn't feel right, it's strained, she just doesn't take it, and she sees that as shortness of breath, but she can't take a full breath in. Now, if you got normal lungs, why can't you? And the answer is, it has to be vagally mediated. And the vagus is connected to so many things. So this, by the way, is sort of a pearl. The inability to take a full breath in is a respiratory reflux symptom, and it's pathognomonic for respiratory reflux. Pathognomonic means the thing is this only. So getting back to this thing where you have all this spiritual stuff, the vagus is the seat of the soul. Nobody knows how the brain works and how things are connected, really. We certainly know emotions play a role. When I had reflux, I found aggravation had me refluxing within 2 minutes. I mean, at most 2 minutes. And so we know that certainly emotions, I'm not sure anxiety, plain anxiety, unless there are these fears and other things that will stimulate in some way the vagus. So The answer is the vagus is connected to so much stuff. Oh, one other good story, that it's not known how many things in your life affect it really. I had a really good one. I had a woman, lovely woman from Colorado, came to see me. She had a reflux and she had a little tick on the right side. And she said, is it related? And I said, I don't know. So I opened up my netter, my neuro beautiful drawings book, and to my surprise, there was a knuckle of the facial nucleus going into the vagus. And sure enough, when her reflux was gone, her tick was gone too. So that's a really cool case. So I've talked about a bunch of things, and the next question fits in: can anxiety make reflux worse? And the answer is yes. I'm over time today, so I'm only going to take 2 more questions. And I want them to be short. Earl Grey tea is fine. Skim milk is fine. Vegan diet is as good as you can do. Gluten-free vegan. I've never been so happy. The only hard part about being vegan and being me, which is more or less most of my time spent at home is writing right now, is you got to go to the store twice every other day, because you're not going to, if you're going to be making salads and cooking vegetables, and I love it. So vegan is the healthiest diet in the world, period. So people want oh, you should go on this diet, that diet. Vegan is the way to go. So listen, I want to thank you all. I'm sorry I went over 7 minutes. One of the questions that I have for you, because I never get through all the questions, is should I do smaller topics? Should I do proton pump inhibitor? Should I do a topic on alkaline water? Should I do a topic on each of these items that are important, and then go on and answer more questions? In any event, thank you all very much, very patient, and I appreciate you coming on.